A very good evening to all our viewers and welcome to a brand new edition of News First Weekend, coming to you live from our Newsfirst studios in Colombo. I'm Arundhati Mudanayaka. Let's start off with a look at the stories making headlines this evening. Questionable paddy purchasing process that has shattered the dreams of farmers. Budget to be presented in Parliament day after tomorrow. As the expectations of the people fulfilled. Prime Minister visits Tirupati. A tense situation arose between students of the University College of Mathura and the police. 13 students arrested. 20th Tour de Sri Lanka Air Force cycle race comes to an end. Buddhika Walnagurusuri of Sri Lanka Air Force clinches the championship. And now the stories in detail. The paddy farmers who went through immense hardships, including the lack of water and a pest infestation to harvest their Maha season produce, are now lamenting over the lack of a proper price for their harvest. This is their story.
Harvesting the yield of the Maha season is taking place in many parts of the island. In line with this, the Paddy Marketing Board decided to impose a standard price of 38 rupees for a kilogram of Nadu rice and 41 rupees for a kilogram of Samba rice. However, News First was able to witness that the real situation faced by the paddy farmers is different to the one depicted by the government. What you can see behind me is farmers harvesting their paddy. Over 3 years, these farmers did not get sufficient water for cultivation. As sufficient rains were received last year, many opted for paddy cultivation. However, at the time of harvesting, these farmers are worried over the fact that there is no proper price for their produce. They purchased only 10 kilograms of paddy from an acre. I cultivated 18 acres. Now I have no way of selling paddy from 18 acres. What will happen is that we have to sell our produce at a low price and bear the loss. We never get any benefit.
We ganna කියලා ඉතින් එහෙම කිව්වට බෝඩ් අහන්නේ මේ තන්තන් ඔල්ලන් ගහලා තියෙනවා. ඒ ගහලා තිබ්බට ඉතින් වැඩක් නැහැ. රජයේ ඉතින් ඒ බොරු කියනවා මිනිසුන්ට අරකයි මේකයි දාන ආධාර දෙන්නම් අරකයි මේකයි කියලා. ඒකට වැඩක් නැහැ.
The story in Polonnaruwa and Min area, where over 1,500 acres of paddy land is ready to be harvested, is not different to that of Dambulla and Kandalama. It was amidst many hardships, including pest and insect trouble, that these farmers are ready to harvest their produce. However, the farmers complain that they are not getting a fair price for their hard-earned produce. 50% of harvesting in the Galgamur area has been completed. However, our observations showed that no one has taken any measures to inform these farmers about the government's paddy purchasing process or about paddy purchasing centres. These people who suffered from the drought for 3 years had to protect their cultivation from peacocks and monkeys during the daytime, and during the night they had to battle with wild elephants. After all these hardships, will these farmers get a fair price for their produce? This is the question that all of them are facing. The government has not yet opened its storage facilities. We are waiting till they do so. We have taken loans. We need to pay for the vehicles that we rented and pay for labour. We will now have to sell the produce to businessmen for a lower price. Meanwhile, farmers in Akkarepattu, Nindavaru, Oluvil, in Ampara too are greatly inconvenienced as they are unable to sell their paddy produce. Farmers point out that they also lack storage facilities to store their harvested paddy.
While the farmers still struggle to sell the harvest from the Maha season, the budget proposal for the year of 2019 is to be introduced on the 5th in Parliament. What are the expectations of the general public on the upcoming budget proposal?
The people have high expectations on the upcoming budget. The people are going through really difficult times, even though they tend to put on a smiling face. There's fire blazing inside of them.
They will reduce the cost of goods or increase salaries. They are mere political displays prior to an election, not actions which will stabilize the country's economy. Means of income for the people should be established. We are sure it will be an interesting budget because the election is upcoming. We hope that the budget will benefit both the farmers and labourers because the farmers and the labourers need more support than the government workers.
We have no high expectations. It's a relief for poor people like us pass if the prices of the goods are reduced.
The budget proposal, which is to be presented on the 5th of this month, which means day after tomorrow, has been finalized. What we have here is a picture taken during the discussions between the Minister of Finance and Secretary to the Ministry of Finance. Now, 4 budget proposals have been presented to the people of this country ever since this government came into power in 2015. Now, the response from the people with regard to these budget proposals that were released during these 4 years, before and after the presentation of the budget proposals, still remains the same. What does this mean? Does it mean that the requirements and the expectations of the people of this country have not been met through these budget proposals?
The annual budget is the document that depicts the annual economic scheme of a country and depicts the allocation of financial resources for the future activities of a government. But the reality behind financial policy is introduced to the country through the many budgets that have been presented in the years gone by is something that should attract one's attention. The closest example on this context is the budget presented for the year of 2018 by the government. The agriculture industry was given prominence in last year's budget. Amidst proposals made for the agriculture sector of the country, removal of silt in the bottom of small and medium-scale tanks, construction of 3 storage facilities to collect farming produce from Polonnaruwa, Kilinochchi and Ratnapura districts, maintaining storage facilities based on a token system, introducing an insurance proposal for paddy, potato, corn and big onions based on weather indexes remain in major. 3,000 million rupees will be allocated. Especially 6 types of plants will be insured in line with providing compensation money of 40,000 rupees for the farmers. But the reality is 1 in 500 farmers have received this compensation money. Although numbers are easily allocated, there is a serious problem with practicality of this. The fishing community of the country has also been on the receiving end of the fallacious promises given by budgets as well as the last year's one. Government handling 50% of the refrigeration cost to store fish from multi-day fishing vessels. Government paying 50% of the cost of multi-day fishing trawlers that are longer than 55 feet. Refurbishment of ferries and ports. Establishing a manufacturing zone to capture and store sea leeches in the Kilinochchi district. Completion of infrastructure facilities of the model Marine Life Industry Park. This list is presented every year. They promised to develop the Chilau Fisheries Harbour but is still at research level. And they said the Gandhara Fisheries Harbour will be developed. What lies? That has not been done. But some harbours, including the Deundara Harbour, underwent some sort of development. That is true. According to the promises given by the 2018 budget, only planning and schemes have been made.
Let's now take a look at some of the views expressed by political and civil organization representatives about the economic situation in the country.
The current government brought in tax reforms in 2015. A few months ago, they imposed a carbon tax too. The VAT, which was at 11%, was increased to 15%, but there is no expected revenue. In 2015, only 13% of the GDP was the revenue. Even in 2017 and 18, it was close to 14%. There was a tax imposed on the data usage of smartphones. Taxes are imposed, but there is no revenue. If the tax income is 100, 94 of it is from the businessmen. That is why there is no income. We can reduce the VAT if we can collect this tax. There were talks about casinos in 2015 and 16. We were told that $100 will be charged from someone who gambles. But even until now, these taxes have not been charged. This is the situation of this country. These are not leaders. They are businessmen. The biggest businessman is called the president. The next in line is the prime minister. There are other agents and shareholders. We call them ministers. Just think about it. What do you think they sell? They sell women, drugs and education. They also sell the health sectors, assets, lands and industries of the country. They even obtain loans to continue with their business. So it is time that we create real leaders.
The main question at hand is whether the aspirations, the hope of the people of this country will be achieved through the 2019 budget. Without looking 3 days into the future, let's for a while go back and look at the past 4 years when several budgets were presented before the general public and whether they have fulfilled the task. Now, I'm sure the general public remember the several supplementary estimates that have been put forward to purchase vehicles for ministers. In 2016, a supplementary estimate of 790 million rupees was presented. In 2017, a supplementary estimate of 700 million rupees was presented, and in 2018 a supplementary estimate of 2.7 billion rupees was presented to purchase vehicles for the minister. These are just a few of the supplementary estimates that have been presented in those years. Now we also remember how several key foreign tours were held during the past couple of years, and every time these individuals went overseas, they did not go by themselves. They made sure that they took several others with them as well, and these foreign tours obviously costs a lot of money to the general public of our country. And while all of this has been happening for the past several years, the people have been looking into the sky with their arms wide open, hoping that these budgets will yield some concessions and some form of relief to the general public of our country. Now, at this moment, we are not talking about the commissions that all of these individuals, the politicians, the people who have authority, have taken into their pockets. Because if we speak about them, what will happen is that it will add more sorrow to the people who are already struggling. So let's leave aside the commissions just for a bit and just focus on the remaining portions. Now, we are talking about the budget that is coming up ahead in 3 days for the year 2019. Now, is this budget coming as a requirement of the people of the country, or is the budget done so that several international bodies, international organizations, and the international community as a whole is satisfied? Is it for us or for the international community? That is a question I leave up to you, and I'm sure from what has been in the what has been happening in the recent past, you will be able to ascertain what this is all about. Now, every time when you talk about developing the country, developing the economy of the country, be it the people in the government, be it the people in the opposition, everybody talks about developing exports. That is one key motto that everyone, a mantra so to speak, that everyone speaks about when it comes to the development of the economy. But what concessions have been provided to the exporters in the country when it comes to traditional and non-traditional exports? I think the government should take a note from here and lay out to the public as to what concessions have been provided in these budgets and the budget that is upcoming as well. Now, coming back to the state banking sector. Now, we know that the state banks in our country are for the public, the general public, the people of the state. But now what has happened? The government has obtained loans from these state banks amounting to billions and billions of rupees. And when it comes to the general public, you and I, when you go to a state bank and request money, the state banks do not have money to give us because the government has taken all of it as loans. And we also remember how people in the past, people connected to the government, control the state banks to get money for their personal benefits. We remember people like MTD Walkers, the company MTD Walkers, where their senior management, individuals in their senior management held cross-directorships in state banks and obtained facilities from state banks to the tune of 10 billion rupees on multiple occasions without the proper securities being maintained. Now, when this happens, this company, as of right now, is experiencing certain economic trouble. But what has happened to the money that has been taken from the state banks? Will that come into the system again? That is once again a question. We remember during the first bond scam how the Bank of Ceylon provided facilities so that the perpetual treasuries limited that bid for the central bank bond scam was benefited. We remember how the Bank of Ceylon provided a proxy bid as well to the tune. Now this all comes to a point where the state banks of this country have been mismanaged. Now, who has the responsibility for this? Who has to be held accountable? The Ministry of Finance and the Central Bank of Sri Lanka should be held accountable for this. All these economic related issues that have been happening in our country. And we remember how after the central bank bond scam came to light, several people had been asking for the forensic audit with regard to the central bank bond scam. Now, the government has been delaying the central bank's forensic audit over a long period of time, and now we hear that the central bank is going to seek the support of 2 Indian companies to carry out this forensic audit. That has been the track record of the government for the past 4 years when these budgets have been presented. So whether this year, the 2019 budget, will yield the results that the people hope for is a question I leave with you.
Well, thank you, Chaturanga, for bringing us those details. Also in local news, products carrying the famous Made in China label is widespread across the island. This story is focused on a traditional blacksmith village in Sri Lanka, which is helpless due to these products being imported from China.
Bowatanawatha in Naula is a village where several traditional blacksmiths reside. Many tools and equipment essential for farming and the daily needs of the people is locally produced by them, yet they face difficulties in meeting with potential traders and the proper market for their products. Those who engage in the industry say that the increase of imported goods have resulted in such a situation.
Back then, when our parents were engaged in the industry, they had a higher demand, but now imported goods have dominated over the market. We are able to supply according to the demand, but the government doesn't provide us with any support.
Against such a backdrop, the authorities of this country should encourage local manufacturers instead of demotivating them by signing unfavorable agreements such as the Singapore-Sri Lanka Free Trade Agreement. China's secret to success was the encouragement given to the local manufacturers in the country to uplift the economy.
13 students of the University College of Mathura were arrested by the Mathura police today for violating a court order.
Since several days, the students of the University College of Mathura have been expressing their opposition over the paddy storage facilities constructed within another sector of the college premises. The students protested over storing of paddy purchased by the government in the storage facilities building within the college grounds by closing the gates of the college in this manner. However, the Mathura police arrived at the location along with the court order to remove the barricades put by the students and to open the paddy storage facilities. This is the tense situation that followed. Riot squad was also called in to control the situation. Subsequently, 13 students were arrested while one police officer was also injured.
The ceremony to award the title of Adhikarana Sanganayaka of the North Central Province to Venerable Gallale Aryavansathera was held in the Buddha Mandapaya in Polonnaruwa this afternoon under the auspices of President Maithripala Sirisena.
The service rendered by Venerable Gallale Aryavansathera to Buddhism and Sangha Sasana was praised by President Maithripala Sirisena. The President presented the document awarding the title of Adhikarana Sanganayaka of the North Central Province to Gallale Aryavansathera. On our way from Colombo to Vaunia, we see a temple in each village. These temples teach us our history and teach us our future. As a Buddhist country, we should be proud that we are the center that spread Theravadi Buddhism to the whole world. Therefore, we need to protect our Sangha. It is only by protecting the village and the temple that we could be able to move forward as a society.
Several factions commented about the statement made by UNP parliamentarian Mujibur Rahman, stating that steps will be taken to defeat the budget overheads of the ministries that come under the President's purview.
They are trying to fulfill their narrow-minded personal political agenda by threatening to defeat the President's budget overheads. This is not Mujibur Rahman's voice. This is not the voice of the backbenchers of the UNP. It is to Ranil Wickremesinghe's need that these acts are done. Ranil Wickremesinghe has an agenda to fulfill and the needs of foreign powers. He is trying to do that through constitutional amendments and making the country unstable. A gentleman sent me some photographs. After sending me the photographs, he asked me whether I know the person named Rizkan in these pictures. I replied saying I do not know any Rizkan here and asked him what the matter is. The Rizkan is seen sitting next to Ranil Wickremesinghe. There is Mujibur Rahman. Fauzi is also there. This Rizkan opened a business in Battala recently and Ranil Wickremesinghe had the honor of cutting the ribbon in that ceremony. But looking at the bigger picture here, Rizkan is the best henchman of Madhush. The individual is trying to turn the money earned through drug peddling into good money. As a result, this individual opened a taxi service. That is the business that Ranil Wickremesinghe had the pleasure of opening with Mujibur Rahman.
I heard that Mujibur Rahman is trying to defeat the president's budget overhead. We must look into Mujibur Rahman's background to conceive such an idea. Through the president's drug eradication campaign, his associates are being threatened. We have to ask the others from the UNP as to whether they are rallying behind people like Mujibur Rahman, who are connected to drug racketeers and money launderers, to defeat the overhead of several important ministries.
Indian media reported that Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe arrived in India for a two-day visit.
It was reported that the Premier visited India to offer prayers at the famous hill shrine of Lord Venkateswara. Indian media said Prime Minister Wickremesinghe and a group of MPs and ministers flew by a special helicopter from Chennai and drove straight to the Tirumala hills. According to reports, the Prime Minister has engaged in several religious activities. There were previous instances where Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe has offered prayers at the Tirupati temple.
Opposition leader Mahinda Rajapaksa visited the Anuradhapura sacred grounds this morning.
Opposition leader Mahinda Rajapaksa, who visited the Anuradhapura sacred city this morning, first visited Mirisavatiya Rajamahaviharaya and thereafter obtained blessings from the Swarnamali Mahasaya. Thereafter, the opposition leader offered a pinnacle of a stupa in the arms to the Dematagala Shaila Kala Ramaviharaya. Subsequently, Mahinda Rajapaksa visited the Sri Mahabodhi and obtained blessings. We are having discussions. There is no promise for the 20. As a principle, we are of the stance that it needs to be changed, but the government cannot. This government has no right to change the constitution.
Parliamentarian Kumar Welgam responded to the statement made by Vimal Weerawansa, citing that Gotabaya Rajapaksa will be the next presidential candidate.
Vimal Weerawansa is not from our party. He has his own separate party, and he also has the right to freely express his opinions. I still remain with the Sri Lanka Freedom Party. Although I support the Flower Bud Party, I represent the SLFP. So as an SLFP MP, I say that Mahinda Rajapaksa should be the presidential candidate.
Recent incidents reveal that Sri Lanka has turned into a victim of human smuggling carried out through the sea. This is the first edition of the special investigation carried out by Newsfirst on this matter.
Attempts by people to illegally migrate to Australia and New Zealand by taking advantage of the strategic geographical location of Sri Lanka have come to light on a number of occasions. Boats which are used in the fishing industry are mostly used by illegal migrants for this purpose. The question is there a possibility of travelling miles across the ocean on board these vessels, manufactured to only hold a limited amount of people and equipment?
You don't find the comforts of a flight or a ship on board these vessels. Dealers claim that these boats are comfortable, but women and children cannot travel in them. It's extremely difficult to travel on these boats.
Despite all such claims, people still tend to offer hundreds of thousands of rupees to smugglers without even considering the risk involved in the process. The most recent incident to prove this was reported on the 14th of last month. This was when police arrested 14 people from Muthukandiya in Siambalandua who attempted to illegally migrate out of the country. The same 15 people, including children, were arrested from Pannegamo in Thisamaramaya for the same reason. The attempt of most of these people who illegally migrate under the radar of law using fishing vessels is to end up in Australia, but most of the time their final destination is the island of Papua New Guinea and Manus. The following is such a base camp in Manus Island where refugees are held. Manus is not a rich and privileged island. All we have here is unfortunate experiences these refugees face. What really happens on the Manus Island? What is the situation of the Sri Lankans who live on Manus Island? More details tomorrow.
And in sports news, Buddhika Walnakuru Surya of the Sri Lanka Air Force won the championship of the 20th Tour de Air Force.
The final stage of the race was won by Avishka Madonsa of the Sri Lanka Ports Authority. The cycle tour is being held in line with the 68th anniversary of the Sri Lanka Air Force. The cycle race, which was held in 3 phases, was attended by more than 140 local and international participants. Prasindu Lakshan of Sri Lanka Navy was awarded as the most talented sportsman in the sprint category. The award for the best youth sportsman was awarded to Shenal Chamod.
The first ODI between Sri Lanka and South Africa concluded a short while ago. The match was played in Johannesburg. South Africa made easy work of the target of 232 runs posed to them by the visitors as they cruised to an 8-wicket victory with 12 overs to spare.
If you consider why the Sri Lankan team wins certain matches and lose in others, if you specifically look at the Test series, a young team played with a new captain. They played with a good mentality. When you take a look at this match, when there are old players playing here, they might think they will run out of time before the World Cup. For instance, if you use these new players for the World Cup, the world has not seen these people, so we might have a better result with the youngsters.
And with that, we wrap up tonight's edition of Weekend Primetime News. Thank you very much for joining us. Good night.